Welcome to Running Hot, Action Network's motorsports betting podcast. I'm your host, Nick Giffen, predictive analyst here at Action Network. And joining me, as always, my co-host, Stephen Young of Roto-Grinders, better known as Stevie TPFL. Last weekend's Southern 500 at Darlington Raceway was won by Hendrick Motorsports' Kyle Larson, with Tyler Reddick coming in second and Chris Buescher rounding out the top three. Kyle Larson grabs his 22nd career victory, but just his first at Darlington Raceway, a track he has dominated throughout the years, finally gets that win. That locks him into the second round of the playoffs with the victory. So, Stevie, what'd you think of the Southern 500? I know seemed to be a pretty good race according to the online polls. What did you think?
I love it. I mean, I love that race just in general. You have to have so many aspects of the race go right for you. Denny probably had the best car. Bell probably really close. I think Larson was probably the third best car behind Bell and Hamlin. And Bell's pit crew just keeps doing their thing and messing up. And I know it's Ty Gibbs pit crew and they switched over, but Bell again, ton of speed, not getting the win. Denny Hamlin, ton of speed and a loose tire. If you're the crew there and you're like, hey, Denny, we didn't feel anything. Like, Denny's been doing this for so long. He knows, like, something was wrong. So definitely stinks for us. We had Denny I felt like great value by the time lines kind of ended last week that we talked about him on Running Hot. So I thought we were going to get the victory lane last week. We didn't. And good for Kyle Larson. He's been fast at Darlington since he started his career in the Cup Series, and it's about time. I think that's the way that we were all kind of looking at it. Like, he was a heavy favorite to win the race and finally kind of put one together, especially after like a really disappointing like Xfinity race for him on Saturday. Absolutely the most dominant car in the Xfinity race. Had an engine issue, running third, and they like tried to fix the issue and the car wouldn't restart. So I mean, overall, I thought the racing was great. It was good to see like some of the cars that have been fast recently had speed, and some of the cars that haven't had speed just didn't have speed. So I think that like predictive wise, it was a great predictive race as well.
Yeah, definitely a very, very solid predictive race. Unfortunately, my 2-win bet was on Denny Hamlin, and that didn't go so well. It was the one predictive thing that didn't go right for me. So one of those deals where, bet on the fastest car and something happened there, loose wheel. They did end up confirming, like you said, loose wheel there. So just unfortunate for Hamlin. But Larson was definitely, if not the best car, at worst the second best car, definitely deserved the win. Tyler Reddick fast all day. And man, Chris Buescher with another top three. That team really coming on at pretty much all track types. But I do have some thoughts on him for this race. We will definitely get into that. So we are at Kansas this week. Kansas, your classic 1.5 mile oval. We've been there earlier this year. We used this same tire package there earlier this year. It's kind of a medium tire wear oval. It's getting a little towards the higher side of tire wear. It was last repaved in 2012, so it's like an 11-year-old surface. So kind of getting to a point where the tire wear is coming into play. Kansas does get occasionally some harsh winters and stuff that'll cause the track to kind of become more abrasive. So our classic 1.5 mile oval, Stevie, I think we all kind of know what to expect. Really, what are you looking at this weekend for Kansas?
I mean, fantastic racing. I mean, the 1.5s have provided great racing all season. So, I mean, that's one thing I think we can look forward to. You mentioned the tire, same tire they ran earlier this year and last September. So last year's final race here. They ran this tire at like Auto Club, Vegas, Nashville, and Pocono, which, I mean, maybe we can comp Vegas. I think Vegas is probably one of the better comps for this racetrack anyway. Looking at high speed intermediates, Vegas, Kansas, Charlotte, Michigan type racetracks. So it's interesting because like we didn't have a ton of 1.5s throughout the year, and then we get into the playoffs and we have a bunch of them. So this is one of the tracks that we're really going to be paying attention to kind of set us up for the next few weeks here outside of Bristol. So overall, I expect the racing to be great, and I expect JGR to be fast.
Yeah, I expect JGR, definitely Toyota, to be the dominant team. They have been in all three next gen Kansas races so far, which is funny because I only have one JGR pick this week because there is some other solid value on the board. I think everybody knows Toyota is going to be good, which has certainly pushed their odds downward, a little bit shorter. So I'm trying to find some value elsewhere, but I definitely think JGR are going to be the team to beat. Obviously, Kansas, Las Vegas, the two most similar tracks, I would say, basically in the whole NASCAR series. They race very similarly to each other, similar in tire wear, similar in performance. Then Auto Club also used the same tires, so I think you can pull a little bit of that in, and just pull in a little bit of overall intermediates as far as handicapping this race. But one other thing I did want to talk about, Stevie, the playoff picture. We have a bunch of drivers sandwiched right around the cut line in the playoffs. Currently, Christopher Bell is on the good side of the cut line with 2,031 points. 1 point back on the bad side is Bubba Wallace. 2 points back is Kevin Harvick. And 4 points back is Ricky Stenhouse Jr. Plus, if we go looking above Christopher Bell, only 2 points ahead of Christopher Bell is Joey Logano. So we have a whole bunch of drivers sandwiched within a 6-point margin here. Does that affect any strategy for Kansas? And overall, just what are your thoughts about the playoff picture?
I don't think it really affects too much here. It's not one of those races where we got to worry about like drivers staying out for stage points unless we get like a caution with like 5 to go or something. It could flip the race a little bit because I mean, if you're anybody in the playoffs outside of maybe like obviously Larson, and like Byron potentially, because I know he's up, I think he's like 45 up or something. If there's a caution that comes out late and Byron's running like fifth, he probably pits and gets track position for the next stage or something. And I mean, that's just not something we can really predict anyway. So I don't think the standings matter too much this week. We kind of already know that like Christopher Bell, he's going to have speed, and it's whether or not like he can put a whole race together. Joey Logano is the interesting one because I mean his green flag speed at Darlington was I think 16th or 17th. He struggled, and like Ross Chastain also like he was 15th in green flag speed at Darlington, and they just kind of put together a solid like called strategy, good pit crew race, and ended up finishing fifth in that race. So that's where like Logano I think needs to improve. Is he finished 12th, didn't have a 12th place car, but I mean Chastain finished fifth and didn't have a fifth place car. Logano is nowhere near safe right now. So I don't just not a good track set for like Michael McDowell in this first round of playoffs, which kind of stinks for him. I think he's going to have to go win Bristol. I don't expect him to be too fast this week. So I think like overall, the playoff picture is interesting. Maybe we talk about it a little bit more next week on like how people could potentially get different at Bristol and maybe run longer on tires or something. But I don't think it matters as much this week. Going back to a conversation that we had last week, though, teams testing stuff. There's so many people on Twitter talking about, oh, this team's going to be testing stuff. They're going to be terrible. Well, that's not always the case. Eric Jones was someone that I was really down on, and they hit on something. Obviously, really good track for him anyway, but he had solid speed. Alex Bowman had solid speed. He's obviously going to be the test car. So, I mean, there was cars that didn't hit on stuff, So I think just overall, we're going to see things work and things not work, and we're going to talk about it with some of my picks this week.
Yeah, I agree with you. And as far as strategy, so like Joey Logano and Ross Chastain, you mentioned them from Darlington. Neither of them scored a stage point, which is huge. Now, the only way strategy really is going to come into play here is if there's a weird caution. We saw that earlier this year. Joey Logano actually won stage 2 with a car that was not fast. It was in the mid-teens as far as his speed at Kansas earlier this year. But he did win stage 2 thanks to a strategy play. So I think, we may have to see some of these teams in the cut line use that approach if there is a situation like that. The interesting one for me would be somebody like Bubba Wallace. He's kind of could point himself in, but this is also his best track, so he could race his way in with a victory. So if something like that happens, Bubba Wallace may be a key decision point there for him. But it is time to dive into some bets for Kansas. As always, we're going to take you a lap around the track. That is 4 turns, one pick from each of us per turn before we drive into victory lane. So, time to throw the green flag here at Kansas Raceway. All right, Stevie, lead us into turn 1 with that green flag.
Well, I mean, you just said it's his best track, so I feel like we have to go to Bubba Wallace.
Yes.
Found his top 5 at plus 180. You got to shop this because it's anywhere from plus 130 to plus 180. So 3 top 5 finishes in the 4 high speed intermediate tracks this season. Ranks 6 in speed on high speed intermediate tracks in general. Bubba Wallace won this race last year. Same tire we ran here at the end of last year. He ranks 3rd in speed at Kansas with the new car. You already kind of talked about it being one of his best tracks. This 2311 team has figured something out at Kansas. Kurt was really fast here. Bubba was really fast. Obviously we saw a little bit of JGR 2311 collab with Denny and Martin Truex being really fast here earlier this year. So, I mean, Bubba Wallace top 5 plus 180. I don't mind if you are going to bet Bubba to win this race. I definitely prefer doing it like early in the week because I do think like he'll unload with some speed and we might see his line move to like 9 or 10 to 1. And you can find it right now like 12-ish, 12, 13-ish to 1. So, I do think, like, if you are going to bet him to win, you probably want to do it early. I don't think you get better than, like, 14 unless he's really bad in practice and qualifying. Then you probably don't want to bet him anyway.
Yeah, I agree with all of that. Bubba Wallace, even that race that Kurt Busch won last year at Kansas, Bubba arguably had a better car. He kept having pit crew issues that would set him back into the mid-teens or even 20s, and he'd just drive back through the field every single time. He was really annoyed after that race because he knew he had a race-winning capable car. So then he went and won the next Kansas race. And then earlier this year, 6th in flags at the first Kansas race this year. So definitely like the Bubba Wallace top 5 call there. For my turn 1 pick, I'm going to go to the other team that's been really good here, Hendrick Motorsports. I'm going to take Alex Bowman top 10 plus 160. Action Network's PJ Walsh wrote this bet up as well. Make sure you check that right up out. I agree with everything he said there. Looking at Bowman, he has the 5th best average flags of all drivers on this tire combo this year. Of course, he didn't race Kansas earlier this year, so that's just Vegas and Auto Club. But if we just look at Vegas itself, which of course is the best comp for Kansas, that was actually 3rd in flags. Last year, yes, Bubba Wallace won this race, but the driver that led the most laps in this very race last year, the playoff Kansas race, was Alex Bowman en route to a 4th place finish. So if you're not looking at the Joe Gibbs or the 2311 Toyotas, the next team you have to look at these 1.5 miles, especially on this tire combo tracks, is Hendrick Motorsports. And I know Alex Bowman's been struggling a little bit. There's obviously some potential for some testing or something like that. But at the same time, he's been so good here, and Hendrick Motorsports has been so good here. And at this track type, this tire combination, that plus 160 is just too long for a top 10.
Yeah, again, like just because someone's testing something doesn't mean that he's necessarily going to be bad. I mean, I feel like Alex Bowman is going to probably have some type of Texas test on his car this week. That's coming up towards the end of September in the 2nd round, and obviously Larson's already advanced. William Byron's in a fantastic spot. So I do think like he will be testing something, but that doesn't mean that like he's not going to have top 10 speed. So I don't mind this one.
Doesn't mean they don't hit on something.
Yeah, right? I know.
They definitely could. It's always like we said, last week, this is if you're testing something, it just widens your range of outcomes. It gives you potentially more downside if you miss, and it potentially gives you more upside if you hit. So that is turn 1. We got to keep rolling the corner here at Kansas Speedway into turn 2. All right, Stevie, what do you got for turn 2?
I'm crazy the rest of this podcast, just so you know.
I love it.
I'm running the high line at Kansas this weekend, obviously. So I'm going to go Ryan Blaney, top Ford. It's 4-1. So Buescher and Keselowski are the 2 favorites as top Fords this week, which they have the recent speed. I get it. But honestly, like if we look at throughout the season, like Blaney has had the consistent speed, especially on the 1.5s. Yeah, obviously Keselowski and Buescher, they were really fast in Michigan, but Blaney dominated Charlotte. That's a 1.5 that is going to comp okay to this racetrack. He ranks 6th in overall speed on high speed intermediates. He's the top ranked Ford in speed. And I mean, he has the best average finish and the best driver rating on these high speed intermediates this year. So the fact that he's like the third favorite in this group and you're getting at 4-1, Logano hasn't had the same type of speed this season. So I'm really kind of saying like it's Blaney versus Roush Fenway Keselowski, because I don't expect McDowell. Harvick's consistent, but he's like an 8th to 12th place car. And I think like Blaney does have top 5 upside.
Yeah, I think if you're looking at the Fords, you definitely want to be looking at that top Ford market because they've been slow compared to the Chevys and the Toyotas, especially on this tire combination. The number one Ford in average flags from the 3 races on this tire combination is Ryan Blaney. But he is only 11th overall among all drivers, right? That shows you how bad the Fords have been. The top 10 are all Chevys and Toyotas. So Blaney comes in as the number 1 Ford in flags on this tire combination. So I think getting him as the top Ford makes a lot of sense. If you look earlier this year at Kansas, Harvick was the top Ford at Kansas, but Blaney was the second Ford. So definitely like fading Buescher and Keselowski in the top Ford market here. So for my turn to pick, I'm going to stick with the Hendrick Motorsports top 10 theme, and I'm going to go Chase Elliott top 10 at plus 140. Chase Elliott, among all active drivers, has the second best average finish at Kansas. And he's plus 140 for a top 10. That's absolutely ridiculous. He has the 8th best average flags on this tire combination this year. He was 7th earlier this year in flags at Kansas. And the dude has a win and 2 second place finishes, and every single one of his finishes outside of like 3 of them have come 12th or better at this track. So I just don't understand top 10 plus 140. Make sure you shop around for this one, but that's just way too long. I took him 30-1 earlier this week to win before he moved shorter. I just love Hendrick Motorsports here, and he's in the owners playoffs, so he's going to be getting still some of the best equipment there. And we've got Alex Bowman potentially testing another setup. Maybe they find something with that setup, and then they could throw it on Chase Elliott and see what happens, mid-race or mid-practice or something like that. We don't know, but I just love Chase Elliott this week because I love Hendrick Motorsports this week as the second team to all the Toyotas.
Yeah, I don't mind this one. Chase Elliott, as long as he doesn't win, I don't care. I'd be happy for you because he'd have to win 3 more times. But I've just got so much hate earlier this year for wanting his under 3.5 wins, and I want that one to hit. So
I don't foresee him winning 40% of the playoffs here. Well, and really 4 of the next 9 would be even more than that. So yeah,
listen,
I think
you knock on wood, okay? You knock on wood. No, I'm just kidding. No, I mean, you're not betting Chase Elliott like top 5, top 3. You're getting Chase Elliott plus odds for a top 10 finish. Like, he can have a bad day and finish top 10. That's just the type of speed and this car has. I mean, he was a 11th to 14th place car at Darlington and finished 8th. So again, like you said, he's in their owners playoffs. He's the only car not in the actual playoffs. Him and Bubba kind of switched on that aspect. But I mean, Hendrick Motorsports is going to definitely kind of focus in on this car until he's out of the owners playoffs, and then he'll be testing stuff. So he kind of alluded to that in an interview last week as well. So I think they're still very focused on trying to win this owners championship.
Yeah, I agree with that. So turn 2, Stevie's getting loose in turn 2 with Ryan Blaney top Ford, and I am taking Chase Elliott top 10 plus 140. So we got to barrel down the backstretch. But before we dive into turn 3, I want to remind you that, gentlemen, first impressions matter. And if you're not taking care of your skin, that's going to be the first thing somebody notices and instantly either thinks you're way older than you are, or you just don't care about your appearance. Show them you do and make a good first impression with Caldera Lab. Caldera Lab creates a high-performance men's skincare product, several products in fact, and the regimen leads off their product lineup, a twice-a-day routine to transform your skin. So just like motorsports betting, where you're starting each week with a clean slate, the clean slate will start and end your day, leaving all types of skin feeling refreshed. Of course, my personal favorite, right here, the base layer. It is your daily moisturizer. I find that extra useful to hydrate my skin and prevent myself from drying up and presenting myself well, prevent myself from drying up in this dry desert heat. Finally, the good helps tighten your skin as it's packed with antioxidants. In fact, 3.4 million antioxidant units to protect your skin. By using the regimen daily, you're using product packed with nature's purest and most potent ingredients. And you know me, I'm a data guy. Data shows that 94% of men's skin showed an overall younger looking appearance after using Caldera Labs products after only a few weeks. Start now and you'll look younger before the end of the 2023 motorsports season. And there's more. The Caldera Lab Icon Eye Serum addresses the three most common concerns around the eyes. That would be your fine lines, your dark circles, and the puffiness. So 1 minute in the morning and at night is all it takes to reduce wrinkles, fine lines, and signs of aging. And just for the Running Hot audience, we have an exclusive offer, their best offer anywhere. Use code RUNNING at calderalab.com and get 20% off right now. That's 20% off with code RUNNING at calderalab.com and make unforgettable first impressions that lead to the charming words, "You look younger." 20% off at calderalab.com with code RUNNING. All right, so we have taken you through turns 1 and 2. We have gone down the backstretch, and it is time to dive into turn 3. Stevie, lead us into turn 3.
Well, I got to go to the 3 car. We're in turn 3.
Oh, baby.
Saw this, and I just was looking at this line, and I was like, why is it so high? But Austin Dillon top 10 plus 700, 7-1 top 10 for Austin Dillon. I mean, it's anywhere from plus 350 to plus 700, so you definitely want to shop this line. But Austin Dillon has finished inside the top 10 in 2 of the 4 high-speed intermediate tracks this season. I mean, obviously, we know with Kyle Busch in the playoffs, the focus is on the 8 car. Don't get me wrong. But, I mean, it also allows the 3 car to be aggressive on trying stuff for next season. So you're crazy if you don't think that this 3 team is not trying stuff. If they hit on something, I mean, if he qualifies or practices with any kind of speed, he's not going to be plus 700 anymore. And if he finishes inside the top 10, we're definitely not getting him at plus 700 anymore this season for a top 10. So this is almost like a Daytona, old Daytona, top 10 line. So, I mean, my model shows value on this, and I'm taking the odds here. I'm playing the odds game. I'm doing a Nick.
Yeah, you're doing Nick. I love it. I love finding these longer shot top 10s or other kind of longer shot bets and throwing my little sprinkles on them here and there. They miss a lot, but when they hit, they make up for all the misses. So I'm right there with you. I really like RCR as a whole. You remember last year, Tyler Reddick was really good at Kansas. He led a bunch of laps in that first Kansas race before having a tire issue. And Kyle Busch really good earlier this year at Kansas. Austin Dillon was 19th in flags earlier this year, which doesn't sound great, but that's only 9 spots away from a top 10, and he did get that top 10 finish. So if he's anywhere better than that, I mean, 700 is already value, 7-1 is already value at that 19th speed in flags, and if he's anywhere faster than that, 7-1 is ridiculous value. So I'm gonna have to tell you on this one, Steve. I think I'm gonna go in half a unit on Austin Dillon top 10 as well. For my turn 3 pick, we're going to stick with that RCR team, but I'm going to go to Austin Dillon's teammate, Kyle Busch, minus 120 over Chris Buescher. Yes, this is where I was referencing Chris Buescher earlier in the podcast here. Kyle Busch, 6th in average flags in this tire combination. Chris Buescher, 25th in flags on this tire combination. That is a massive discrepancy. So yes, RFK racing has gotten better throughout the year, better since last year, but 25th to 6th is a massive gap to cover. That even if they have improved a lot, I still think Kyle Busch should be quite a decent favorite in this matchup, much more so than minus 120. Both RFK cars were absolutely out to lunch at Kansas earlier this year. Chris Buescher was 20th in flags, and Brad Keselowski was 29th or 30th in flags, something like that. I actually don't have the number in front of me, but I do remember it was 29th or 30th. Rowdy earlier this year, he finished 11th in stage 2, which doesn't sound great, But remember, I talked about how Joey Logano took that alternate strategy. Well, the first 8 cars took that alternate strategy. So Kyle Busch was actually third on the what I'll call the fast car strategy. So Kyle Busch was third at the end of stage 2 in this one. So, I just think there's too much discrepancy here between Buescher and Busch to not bet on Rowdy here at minus 120.
Yeah, I mean, Kyle has definitely been faster on the high-speed intermediates this year. Like you mentioned, Keselowski was awful at Kansas. Buescher was bad at Vegas and Kansas, which is obviously concerning when we comp those 2 races together. So, I mean, if we're looking at strictly the data that we like to look at for intermediates, this tire combo and Vegas slash Kansas, I mean, Kyle should be probably 140, 150 in this matchup. So, yeah, I mean, getting this at minus 120, I'm good with that. I definitely have Kyle Busch over Chris Buescher in this matchup.
Yeah, I agree with that. So, I think, like you said, around minus 140, minus 150, a fair value on this bet for me. So we have 1 turn left. Let's roll the corner through turn 4. All right, Stevie, take us through that final turn.
All right, I got another half unit top 10 bet. So I'm just needing one of my Austins to come through for me this week, whether it be Austin Dillon or Austin Cindric. We got Austin Cindric at plus 800 for a top 10 this week. Like I said, doing half unit on both the Austin bets here. I mean, we're getting a Penske car for a top 10 at plus 800. I mean, that's, first of all, that just screams value to me. 1 week, new crew chief already. Austin Cindric, way more speed last week than he's shown pretty much all season. So that was, I mean, really good to see. He had some issues, but before the issues, he was really fast. So he was someone that had a top 10 car at Darlington. Again, we're talking about how these teams are going to be trying stuff, and he's definitely going to be trying stuff, but that doesn't mean he's not going to hit on something. So, I mean, there's risk on a team testing and, getting a top 10, but I mean, Cindric finished 6th at Las Vegas earlier this season, which is a nice comp to Kansas. He had some issues at Kansas. So if he can just stay out of trouble and they hit on something again, like this is another Austin Dillon situation for me. I'm just liking the odds that we're getting on these like really long top 10s. Eric Amarola at like plus 850 is another one that I don't mind firing at, like one of these like long odd top 10s. So just really, for me, taking a Penske car for a top 10 at plus 800, whether it be strategy, whether they hit on something, with Logano, how slow Logano has been on the intermediates, like Cindric is definitely going to be aggressively testing something for Logano because that team needs some help.
Yeah, this is an interesting one because Cindric was 21st in flags at Vegas, and like you said, he got that 6th place finish. A little bit of a shakeup there on that final sequence of runs there. I think there was a caution in there at Vegas. Kansas, he was 24th in flags, and remember that's just measuring healthy car laps. So I know he finished 7 laps down, but we're just looking at healthy car speeds. So it's going to be tough for him to finish in the top 10, but that's why he's 8-1. It's one of those funsy bets, as you like to call it there. So I don't mind taking a Penske car that could be testing at 8-1. But I think of the 2 funsy bets, I far prefer the Austin Dillon 7-1 versus the Cindric 8-1. For my funsy bet, I'm going to take Ty Gibbs for a top 5 finish at plus 550. And this one's a little bit out there, I know. But we do like Toyotas, right? So I don't want to, I know his top Toyota is something like 14-1, but I don't want to take him top Toyota because I think Toyota's going to be stuffing the front of the field. Hamlin, Truex, Bubba, Reddick, all those guys, Bell, they're all going to be fast. So I don't want to take Ty Gibbs as top Toyota. But what I want to do is take him top 5 because that allows other Toyotas to finish in front of him. And it gives them 5 places to finish to win this bet, first, second, third, fourth, or fifth. Earlier this year at Kansas, Ty Gibbs was 5th in flags. So we're getting a guy who was 5th in speed, in true speed, at plus 550 for a top 5 finish. Yes, I know he didn't finish 5th earlier this year, but he had top 5 speed. There is a chance they experiment, of course, being the one car outside of the playoffs of the whole Toyota camp. But again, that just widens their range of outcomes. And you know what that does? If you're widening your range of outcomes, you're lowering you're increasing your downside, but you're also increasing that upside. So instead of taking a top 10, I want to take something with upside. So I'm going to take the top 5 and play to the upside here of potential testing. Toyota has been just absolutely the dominant manufacturer in the next gen car, and Ty Gibbs himself has crushed this track overall. It's been a solid track for him. I know he has, 2 bad finishes here, but in Xfinity, he has a win and a 3rd place finish. In that 3rd place finish, he also led the most laps. So this is a very good track for Ty Gibbs. He just needs to bring home those finishes because he has the speed here.
Yeah, I mean, Gibbs had a ton of speed here earlier this year. I think he had a slow pit stop or something, and then had some issues. Like he had a slow pit stop and then they crashed. Right? I'm pretty sure that's what happened with Gibbs.
Yeah, he finished 34th. He's finished 34th in both of his 2 Cup Series Kansas starts with incidents, but
it was one of his
indicative.
it was one of his fastest races this year though. As far as overall speed. So Toyota, we've kind of said it so much, but Toyota, every week we go to look at lines and stuff, and usually Toyota's plus 160, 170 to be the winning manufacturer. They're the favorite. They're plus 100. It's even money right now. Chevy is the second favorite this week, and we know how good Chevy is in general. So just to kind of hone in on that, Toyota is so good at this racetrack that they're an even plus money favorite against Chevy with less cars this week. So yeah, I mean, again, I think if he can stay out of issues, stay out of trouble, he does have Bell's pit crew. I mean, that's one downside. So that's one downside. But I mean, his pit crew had a slow stop here earlier this year that got him in a wreck. So I think the speed is going to be there.
Bell's pit crew, which in that current pit crew was Ty Gibbs' crew. They had 2 terrible stops at Darlington, so just crazy stuff. But one final note here on this bet: if we look at stage 1 from Kansas earlier this year, because that's the real true test of speed for Ty Gibbs, because stage 2 had that funky caution or whatever that threw the strategy into play. Ty Gibbs finished 3rd in stage 1 behind Denny Hamlin and Martin Truex Jr., right in front of his Toyota teammate Tyler Reddick in 4th as well. So it's Toyota 1, 2, 3, 4 early this year at Kansas stage 1. So that's a lap around Kansas, but we have one thing left to do. We got to drive into victory lane, and I know we like Toyota this week, Stevie, but I think we're looking elsewhere for our victory lane pick.
Yeah, I mean, we are getting the old 18 at 18-1. Kyle Busch, number 8 now, but 18-1. I like this. I thought it was really close at 14-1, and Nick's like, hey, look here, it's 18-1. I was like, all right, well, that's just solid. We're getting a fast race car with a above average driver who has been fast on intermediates, I feel like, since he got into a Cup car way back when. So I mean, this just seems like great odds. We know that RCR has had speed in the past. Look at Tyler Reddick last year. Austin Dillon had some speed on these intermediate tracks last year as well. Kyle, he's been hit or miss, but when he was good, he had top 5 speed at Charlotte. He had top 10 speed at Kansas. So, yeah, I think overall, if you're going to use that tire code and you're going to look at Auto Club, well, I mean, the guy was the fastest car at Auto Club earlier this year. So, yeah, Kyle Busch at 18-1 just seems like really good value to start the week. Outrights, not seeing a ton of value overall. And I do think Martin Truex Jr. and Denny Hamlin are the favorites. I'm not going to sit here and say they're not, but look at last week. Christopher Bell, issue, one of the fastest cars. Denny Hamlin, one of the fastest cars, loose wheel, third or fourth place cars can win races. So I think Kyle at 18-1 is solid.
Yeah, like you said, 3rd or 4th place cars can win races. And just looking at average flags from these tracks with the same tire combination, Kyle Busch 6th in average flag. 6th place cars can win races. And Kyle Busch is currently 9th on the odds board if you look at the actionnetwork.com bet center presented by BetMGM. Kyle Busch is 9th on the odds boards when you look at all the books and take each driver's best available odds. So when he's the 9th most favored driver or in the odds board, and he's actually the 6th fastest in speed. We should be getting some value there at 18-1 on Kyle Busch. So Kyle Busch, 18-1 for the former number 18 as our victory lane pick. So that will do it for us. Thank you for listening to the Hollywood Casino 400 episode of Running Hot, Action Network's motorsports betting podcast. We'll be back this time next week to talk about bets for the Bass Pro Shops night race at Bristol. I can't wait for that one. On behalf of my co-host, Stephen Young, thanks again for listening, and we'll see you back here next week on Running Hot from Action Network.